It's time now for the Casey Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guests and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's Casey Ingram.
The Casey Ingram Show is sponsored in part by Meridian Marina and Yacht Club in Palm City. Meridian Marina and Yacht Club is located on the banks of the St. Lucie River in Palm City and is the premier marina in Martin County, focusing on excellent customer service so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. Meridian Marina offers concierge services, yacht club amenities, sales, and service surrounded in a lush tropical setting. Meridian Marina is the largest marina in Martin County on 11 3/4 acres with a 62,000 square foot indoor storage facility that can accommodate up to 300 boats. Meridian Marina is not just a place to store your boat. When you become a member of Meridian Marina and Yacht Club, you can enjoy events such as trips to the Bahamas, snorkeling adventures, marina parties, and more. Check out their events tab at meridianmarina.com. Don't forget, you can also try out their great service department that's open 5 days a week from 8 to 4. Call them up at 772-221-8198. That's 221-8198. Or visit them online at meridianmarina.com. For more details. At Meridian Marina, we do all the work so you can enjoy your boating lifestyle. In the studio today, hello, Stuart. This afternoon, I have Nyla Pipes with me. She is the founder and director of OFF, One Florida Foundation, and she has been studying water issues for as long as I've known her, quite a few years. She's serving her second term on RAC, which is the Water Resource Advisory Committee.
Analysis Coalition. Water Resources Analysis Coalition.
Mm-hmm. And she is coming in today to talk specifically more about the septic to sewer conversions, why we should do them, and also pending legislation that's going to be coming up in Tallahassee. So how are you doing today, Nyla?
I am good. I'm really excited as we move forward and really, I think, are beginning to make some progress on our sewage and septic issues. Since 2013, I've been telling people this is a big problem. And some people have not necessarily agreed with me, but as time has gone on, more and more science has shown via isotopes. So, we know that it's sewage. That sewage is an issue throughout the state of Florida, and our infrastructure very definitely needs upgraded.
It is. We always hear about the discharges, but one thing we don't hear a lot about is oftentimes in the spring when it's before it is the rainy season, necessarily, or before the discharges, I should say, when the rainy season starts up, all of a sudden we have contamination in the St. Lucie River, but no discharges. So there's a big
As a matter of fact, that happened this last summer. Over the holiday weekend, we were not allowed to go to the Stuart Sandbar, and there were no Lake discharges.
No.
And it was due to fecal bacteria.
Fecal matter right here in our St. Lucie River. Nyla, let's step back 1 second. Tell us, what is the function of a septic tank, and why is it a problem for us?
So septic tanks are really a rudimentary way of handling our sewage. And what it consists of is when you flush, all of your waste settles into this tank. And the tank itself is only to settle out the solids. And from there, all of the effluent is what they call it. All of the watery portion of the waste goes out into a drain field. In that drain field is where you're supposed to get your cleansing, right? It's a filtration through soil. The reason that they don't function well in the state of Florida is because our soils are not well suited in many, many places. They percolate too quickly. So from the bottom of your drain field to the top of your groundwater, you should really have about 4 feet. In the state of Florida, at sea level, you're very lucky if your yard is not flooded during a heavy rain. So if your yard is flooded and you're supposed to be, getting filtration from dry soil below your drain field before it reaches your groundwater, there's no filtration happening. So a lot of people think that it really is the solids that are the problem, but nitrogen, urea is very high in nitrogen, and that's where we're not getting our filtration. Nitrogen is not filtered much, even in a fully operational standard on-site septic tank. They're just designed that way. They don't remove much. So that's why we really need to be moving toward sanitary sewers, municipal sanitary sewers. And ideally, you want the advanced wastewater treatment plants with tertiary treatment, more than one process to remove all that nitrogen. Now that we've removed a lot of phosphorus, through our years of work, we're discovering that we've upset that balance, and nitrogen is really coming to the forefront scientifically as our big problem.
Isn't that something? And I can see why it would be, as a matter of fact. So tell us, Nyla, a little bit, how many, septic systems are there in the area? And I'm talking the Treasure Coast. I mean, is it a big problem? I know, City of Stewart's going on sewer.
We'll start with the state of Florida having somewhere between 1 and 2 million septic tanks.
Wow.
They say that on average, about 2 people out of every 5 in the state of Florida rely on septic.
Okay.
And, it happened because it was a really quick, easy, and inexpensive way to develop. The problem was further complicated because environmentally, a lot of people used to think that if you don't put in sanitary sewers, then we don't have to grow. Those are old school ways of thinking that no longer apply. And what happened is, nearest the water bodies is where we developed first, right? That's where everybody wanted to be. So guess where we have the oldest and the most malfunctioning septic tanks throughout the state?
On the water bodies, the rivers, the tributaries. Right.
Exactly. So, the numbers are fuzzy. There is actually, the Department of Health has a Florida Water Management Inventory project that they've been working on since about 2014. And there are holes in that because they really relied upon reporting from various agencies, counties, municipalities, wastewater treatment plants themselves, et cetera, because it's kind of a hodgepodge between some private industry and, of course, the county and city governments.
Right.
So there are known numbers and then there are estimated numbers according to the Department of Health. Martin County, as of 2015, and I know we've done some work to get a little better since then. But as of 2015, the numbers were 16,172 known septic tanks and 13,674 likely. So these numbers are throughout the state in exactly that same way. You start adding up the counties, it's really astronomical.
It truly is. And I know that, I live in Palm City, and I used to live on Pine Tree Lane. And also there's a, Lighthouse Point that's back in there. And all these homes, have their septic systems. And it was an every year occurrence, it seemed like, almost, where the streets would flood, our yards would flood. We would desperately be calling the pump out company to come pump out the septic tanks. And it's proof. I mean, it was proof to me. I'm like, this is not working. This is a huge problem. And this is draining right into Bessie Creek, which goes right into the St. Lucie River.
Absolutely. And then when we do get those discharges that bring with it the algal blooms that occur in Lake Okeechobee, then we're feeding it downstream.
Right.
So a lot of people try to make this conversation an either or, and it's not. We must do everything. It's expensive. And I know that we're desperately behind. And I know the average homeowner doesn't necessarily have 10 or 12 grand to plop down on a septic tank, but there are ways that we can move forward. And I think that our state legislature is really looking for those ways. I think that our new governor is leading the charge on that, along with a couple of senators and, House representatives. So I'm pretty excited about the movement forward.
Where can folks go online to look up where the septic tanks are, where the sewer systems are? Is there an area or a place to go?
Sure. There's a long, convoluted link, of course, because it's government, on the Department of Health website. But if you Google Department of Health Florida Water Management Inventory Project, and then you scroll down a bit on that page, there's a map. And on that map, you can go county by county and you can pull up these maps that literally show you what the sewer is, what the septic is. It's all color coded. It's very easy to see, where they're located and how many there are. So
it's very important, especially as home buyers are looking for homes. You'll oftentimes find that the ones that are already converted to a sewer system are going to be a little higher value. People appreciate having a sewer system as opposed to the septic and having to worry about pumping them out. It is really a big issue here, and I do appreciate you coming here to talk to us about this. As we are talking about this, you have mentioned there could be some upcoming legislation in regards to septic to sewer.
Yes. The governor really made some very strong statements environmentally right out of the chute. And one of the things that he talked about was the need for septic to sewer conversion and getting ahead of our sewage infrastructure problem. Representative Randy Fine in Brevard County has House Bill 85, and Senator Gruters over on the West Coast has introduced Senate Bill 214. Those are companion bills. That's a really important thing, because if a bill doesn't get a companion bill on either the Senate or the House side, then it really doesn't have any future. So for them to come out so early on in committee weeks with both of these bills and to have companion legislation being proposed is a big deal. And what those bills do is, first of all, we have no requirement currently for septic inspections. So they do lay down a 5-year inspection requirement, and with that, a requirement to either pump out or make necessary changes to make sure that it's functioning. Now, that being said, we all know that, like I just said, if you're in a high water table, it's not functioning anyway.
Right.
I have to say that caveat. The other thing is to update that inventory I was talking about, because we need to know. We can't go on, okay, we think there's a septic tank there. We need to know exactly how big our problem is. The other thing is to develop minimum state standards for a functional system. Again, we're back to, does a standard system work here? Or is this an area that floods? Is it too rural to hook up? Maybe it's too far away.
Right.
Maybe we need an above ground nitrogen removal system, which is kind of equivalent cost-wise to just hooking up to sewer if it's available. So there are lots of options, but we need to know what we've got, and we need to know what functional means. So how do we define that for the state of Florida? It's a very important part of the legislation being proposed. They're looking to develop a 10-year county-by-county plan and really tackle this in a really umbrella sort of way, as opposed to all of us having to come up with it on our own and fight for those dollars. And then that's the biggest piece of the puzzle, is they're proposing a $50 million a year, renewable dedicated source for some matching funds, so that homeowners and counties and cities aren't all taking this on by themselves. If we can come up with some matching grants, great, we can go for it. And then, hopefully make this a lot more affordable for people.
I agree, Nyla. And I think that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks for converting septic to sewer is the cost of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard around $20,000 it can cost. So that's very expensive for any homeowner. But, especially, if you're in a $200,000 house, that's 10% of the value of your home. So we certainly need some help there.
Sure. And, I encourage people to look at it as not that big bite, because generally, if a county like Martin County, I know they're working really hard. There's a meeting tomorrow, in fact, regarding some of that. They're looking for ways to help the homeowner.
Right.
This is expensive. But so is putting on a new roof.
Right.
So is fixing your driveway if it crumbles.
Right.
You find ways to pay for it. And I think that the biggest stumbling block is not just the money, but also the mindset. It's easier to blame somebody else than it is to look in the mirror. And I say that as humbly as possible, because I'm a human being who has ways too, and I think that we all have to just realize that. We have to look in the mirror and we have to go, oh, wait, there are 20 million of us living on a peninsula.
Right.
We might be part of the problem. It's not all our neighbor or the neighboring county or, the people in the rural lands, et cetera.
And that's very true. It is something that I think it's going to become, yes, it's expensive, but it's going to become necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be a point someday that before you sell your house, you're going to have to be converted to a sewer system.
Well, and I think that Irma really, if there is a silver lining, which we all know there isn't, but Irma really showed us how big our problem is, with the vast amount of flooding, the vast amount of failure we had statewide.
Right.
You've got to consider the cost of not fixing it. If we don't fix this and we don't fix our water, guess what? Your property value is not going to matter. If we continue to make those headline,
the wrong
news
headlines.
pieces,
That's right.
It's not good for any of us.
Right.
So, we just have to invest. We have to find a way.
We do. And I think we do have a governor that has been elected that has really put this issue on the forefront, as you said. So we could see some big changes coming up here in the 4 years.
The other thing that I want to do is make sure that people know this isn't septic or sewer as far as the problem, because that's one of the reasons that people say, oh, I'm not going to connect. Yes, in some cases and Martin County's in good shape, but there are counties up and down the lagoon that aren't, as far as their actual sanitary sewer, their municipal sewer goes. They don't have room to connect, or they fail so regularly it's not even funny. Or perhaps they're in a really bad place. And as a St. Lucie County resident, yes, Fort Pierce, I'm looking at you. We shouldn't have these sewer plants right on the water. And if they're aged out, we have to upgrade them as well. So it's, again, not either or, it's all of the above. And one of the things that this legislation also proposes is a more serious fine structure for those failures. And what they're doing is they're saying, you know what, you can pay $1 per gallon for your sewage spill, or you can fix the problem, and we'll count that as like $2 per gallon worth of work, right?
Right.
So they're really incentivizing the municipal sewer systems, or even some of the privately owned sewer systems, to step up to the plate and do what's needed there too. So I don't want people to go away thinking, oh, I'm just putting this on you. It's all of us,
It is. It truly is all of us. And again, what is the House bill and the Senate bill for people to follow? And I encourage you all to write your local representatives and senators and encourage them to support these bills.
Absolutely. And a huge thank you to Representative Randy Fine, Senator Gruters, and of course our local delegation who have gotten right behind all of this. Senate Bill 214 and the companion bill is House Bill 85.
85. So that's the numbers, folks. Now, Nyla, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you are director and founder of OFF, One Florida Foundation. Tell me a little bit about what that is, what you do. Do you go to Tallahassee sometimes? I know you do.
We are an advocacy and education organization. It's funny because OFF is kind of an unfortunate moniker, right?
Right.
But over time, I've developed this attitude toward it that is rosy. We're getting off septic. We're getting off our dependence on blaming someone else. We are moving off of the topic of dirty water and onto the topic of clean water. So One Florida, we were founded out of the unfortunate blue-green algae event of 2013, that last summer.
Right.
We began to realize that we were going to have to work very long-term at this. The expense of fixing the problem, dictates that. And we spend some time in Tallahassee. But we also spend a whole lot of time here at the local level talking to people and, showing them maps, showing them, diagrams of how septic tanks work, showing them how the Everglades function, why we have the discharges, where we are with Everglades restoration. Because there is actually work being done, and you wouldn't necessarily believe that sometimes if you just rely on headlines.
Right.
But there's literally work being done every single day between the Water Management District, the Army Corps of Engineers. It's just that it's a really large problem with a lot of counties involved. I mean, the Everglades technically takes up 16 counties in South Florida.
It's incredible.
It's a lot of land space.
That is. And a lot of municipalities that have to all agree and get along and work towards the same goal.
Politically, things get a little weird. And people obviously have different viewpoints and different things that they work toward. But I think that it's important to remember, if we're all saying the same thing, and this is a different school of thought than a lot of people have, but it's actually something I bring with me from the Pacific Northwest where I come from. If we're all saying the same thing, we're easily ignored, right? As a mom, if I hear mom, 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 mom all day, I kind of tune that out. The second my children say dad, I go, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Why are they asking? That's right.
So if we carry this in a little different way, where I maybe talk about the septic issues as more of my priority, and somebody else is working a little harder on the fertilizer issues, which of course we should all be conscious of what we put on the ground at all times, right? So that's not a non-issue. It's just not maybe my issue.
Right.
If we quit saying, okay, what's the biggest problem? And we all say, we have a problem and we work on what we can. I liken it to one of those tarps that they use when you have a burning building and people jump out.
Right.
As firemen, if everybody held the same part of the tarp, there would be no safety, right?
That's right.
We've got to have this safety net stretched taut and carry different parts of this conversation. So
that's a very good analogy.
That's how I look at it. And I know it's a little different, but I think that it's making sense to people because I reach a different audience than somebody who may have a different approach. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Everybody has a place in this system. And I say system, but the state, our water issues, everybody has a place. And together, if we're all rowing in the same direction, accomplishment will happen. And, you're stating now, this is exciting to see legislation introduced already this early on.
Yes.
And it has a support in the House and the Senate, or supported bills in both. So that's an exciting step all in itself.
Mm-hmm. And anybody who has been along, for the ride and been talking about these issues for the last 5 years, thank you.
Right.
Or 10 years or 12 years. And they're out there. There are people who have been really working at this for a very long time. It's just the way advocacy works.
Decades or
weeks.
Takes time. That's right. Decades or weeks, whatever you can put in, it all matters. It truly does. So tell me a little bit about your appointment to RAC. What does RAC do?
So the Water Resources Analysis Coalition, I feel, is a really important place for different stakeholders throughout the state to talk about these issues on a regular monthly basis. And it's all, televised. You can go to the South Florida Water Management District website and see it. They do it Facebook Live now, all
Very
of that.
nice. Yes.
And it's the first Thursday of every month. And there are various people with various viewpoints appointed to the RAC. There are landowners, there are tribal members, there are people from FWC, DEP.
Very well-rounded, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the idea is to get a little bit of a taste of all of the different viewpoints throughout the state and preferably throughout the 16-county ecosystem, right?
Right.
And what we do is a lot of discussion about current issues. They bring forward and give us presentations, about what the latest work is on the C-111 spreader canal. I don't live in that part of the system. So I appreciate those updates from the district, from the scientists, from the staff, because I get to learn more about what's holding us up down south.
Right.
But I also get my time to come to them and say, okay, so in the St. Lucie River right now, this is what we're seeing. In Port St. Lucie, I know that they happen to be working on their own septic to sewer conversions, right? I get to make sure that other people know in our part of the system that we're trying to do our part, and to encourage them to come and see what we have going on, whether it be good or bad, because it's important that we all sort of look at this holistically. And I think RAC really helps us to do that. It helps us to understand each other's value that we bring to it, each other's communities a little more.
Right.
I know far more about the Caloosahatchee than I used to know. And this is one of the things about Lake Okeechobee and water supply, for instance. If we let the lake go too low, they worry they won't have enough water to give to the Caloosahatchee if we run into a drought to keep saltwater intrusion from being a problem on that coast. Now, that's not a problem we have with the St. Lucie. We'd be fine if we never, ever had any discharges.
Right.
The Caloosahatchee side actually needs some, and I know more about that from a very personal way because there are several representatives from that side of the state that bring to us their very current, real, boots on the ground views on that.
Right. Right.
So,
this is very exciting. So what's coming up? Are you going to be going to Tallahassee here soon, or?
Well, we've got a RAC meeting next Thursday.
There you go. Okay.
So
Facebook Live.
so yeah, first Thursday of every month on that.
And is there a Facebook page for RAC?
There is not a specific. It's South Florida Water Management District's page.
There you go. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And a Facebook there.
And then, of course, the governing board meeting is the following Thursday, just
Okay.
so everybody marks that on their calendars. Right. At the moment, I've been watching this legislation. I don't have a planned trip to Tallahassee, but that's one of the things about this work. Sometimes you decide at 6 p.m. that you need to be in Tallahassee at 9 a.m. Government works that way, and it's just sort of sudden sometimes. So I'm watching closely, and we will definitely be going in the near future. I want to make sure to meet with everybody on each of the committees, and talk to them and say, hey, this is really important legislation, and here's why. Let's make sure you understand how a septic tank works. And I know that might seem silly, but sometimes they don't know these things. If they've always had a sewer.
It's very important work, Nyla. Thank you so much. And folks, go to her page.
It's onefloridafoundation.org is our website.
She can use any help, even donations. She does a lot of work. She's all volunteer. Thank you, Nyla.
Thank you.